Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be able to to introduce Representative Todd Hunter. Todd is not a stranger to any of you because he has been long serving and highly effective in the Texas legislature since off and on since 1993, as I recall. He took a little break uh, with his family and then came back a few after about a 6 year break. He is seventh in seniority in the Texas House at this point in time, I believe, and he has served as chairman of numerous committees, presently and most recently as the State Affairs chairman in the House, and he was the House sponsor of Senate Bill 7, which was addressed last session, which addressed our electricity needs. So, Todd, hopefully you can fill us all in on what you see current and future. Thank you.
This is Todd Hunter, and I hope everybody has weathered the storm. I heard that Kennan had introduced me. Kennan's been an old friend for many, many years, and I appreciate him. And all of you that are putting on this program, it's kind of symbolic that we're talking about water, flood, and weather as this tropical storm blows through our area. It seemed more like last night we had flooding throughout the day yesterday, then we had the threat of tornadoes last night in a lot of the areas of the coastal bend. So glad everybody's there. I'm having to conduct this virtually, but I'll give you kind of an update. I'm kind of expand the topic a little bit because it's focused on flooding, but what I'm going to do is give you kind of a legislative and kind of weather flooding update because they all interconnect. And there's some weather events statewide that are now getting merged or connected to issues that we face in the coastal bend area. And so I want to go through these because as they develop, your issues may get impacted and your operations may get impacted. So first, let me give you all kind of a state legislative 101 so you at least know some deadlines and how to approach the state or the legislature. In particular, the Texas Constitution says the Texas legislature meets once every 2 years for 140 days. And the only way there's an exception is if the governor calls a special session. And the governor has some limitations because special sessions can only be called 30 days at a time, and you're tied to that specific topic. So in the last few years, we've had a lot of special sessions, but on specific topics. But for your area, I would be focused on the general session, which will be coming up this January. I think it's the second Tuesday of January. And then we will go for 140 days. Now, let's say that some of you want to change the law, or some of you have policy ideas. Some of you want to get legislation developed. Let me give you two approaches. Let's say one of you has a concept on flooding issues, impact issues, state government communication issues on flooding impacts. Let's just take that. The first is when we start in January, we only have about 60 days to file bills. So if you have an issue on water, it needs to be filed within 60 days of the start of the session. Because after that, the deadline's over, and it's very rare that you can move an issue. So think first on developing legislation the first 60 days. Second, The other way to do it is right now, the state legislature, the Senate and the House, have begun to start their hearing schedule between now and basically end of November. And what this is various committees will start taking up topics. For example, I'm chairman of state affairs. I have an oversight in particular of the Public Utility Commission and ERCOT, the grid. And so we started a hearing process, and we just had a hearing. We'll have another hearing July 8th. We're going to have another one August 16th, September 17th, and we'll go into October. The reason for telling you all this is check online under Texas House of Representatives or Texas Senate under committees. And what you want to do is get those notices and read them to see if they're topics that impact you. So the reason I'm giving you this as a second alternative for legislation is we all do reports at the end of the year, and then we propose the laws for next session. So you have not only the option one, waiting till next session, but also have the concept now of trying to develop policy to help you while we're meeting. And you can follow these virtually or audio. You don't have to go to the hearing locations. So I wanted to give everybody that procedure so you don't miss the opportunity. Now, there is another concept. The election, when the election's over after November 5th, mid-November, there is a process called pre-filing. And pre-filing means you can file legislation early. Now, I will tell you, practically, I wouldn't do that. Because number one, the first laws that are pre-filed are generally the first ones that everybody can chew on. And so what you do is you just kind of put that out there until more and more bills are filed. So I always tell people, be a little hesitant, because all it does is bring in a lot of feedback on what you file. So just follow those three concepts on filing legislation. Now let's talk about your concept and policy relating. Here is what's happened. Water, flood, the issue of storm, the issue of catastrophe, the issue of river authorities, are now all being combined into basically a same group. Several weeks ago, I was placed on an investigative panel, 5 of us, 3 legislators, in the Panhandle. And it was about those wildfires. I think it was 1.2 million acres were destroyed. Over 10,000 head of cattle were destroyed. And they've alerted everybody, be ready, that's going to impact beef prices coming up later this summer. What I learned from those hearings is very much what happens to us when we have water events, when we have wind events. They basically are a land hurricane. They have the fires. They have many of our same problems. Many of our problems are there. They don't have water because of the burn up. But what they do is have a catastrophe, and it impacts insurance. It impacts emergency planning. It impacts the idea of utilities. It impacts their water resources. So what ends up happening is it may be a fire cause or we're a water cause, but the concepts and policy are very, very similar. So what developed from that hearing, and it was interesting listening to their public members, because many of their public members had some of the same concerns I hear on water and wind issues in our area. But what I learned and what you need to be prepared is I believe there's going to be a movement statewide to do a catastrophe plan. Now, the specific ingredients to the plan have not been finalized or developed finally, but there is a move that since Texas is having flood events, rain events, fire events, hurricane events, we have tornado events, hail events, and fire events, that maybe they are all related in the sense of a plan for not only insurance, emergency, but the coordination of agencies. And so be prepared for a comprehensive policy move that includes you. And you want to have input in it. Don't sit on the sideline. Make sure as this develops, you let us know. In particular, my committee was assigned the fire issue, even though there's an investigative committee. They then placed it with me to oversee for the report to be filed at the end of the year. In addition, they gave me the TWIA windstorm insurance issue, as well as the property casualty issue. One of the reasons I believe is you've got flood insurance, wind insurance. You have the issue is it water versus rain. You also have the issue is it wind versus water. And what ends up happening is whether it's hurricane, fire, hail, tornado, we're all hitting the same catastrophe. So insurance now is part of emergency planning. It's part of the issue of coordinating with the agencies. It's now part of the issue of cause and effect, as well as being able to economically survive. So bottom line, you're going to start seeing this coordination. I will be having hearings on some of those issues in August. I believe it's August 16th and September 17th. The hearings will be in Austin, but you can be able to follow by virtually through a link that is prepared. So you can go to the Texas House of Representatives website under State Affairs. It'll go there, and you can go under upcoming hearings, and it gives you the two notices and the links. But I would suggest many of you be involved with that. That's important. Now, I believe there will be other hearings on these issues in addition to my committee. I wanted to make sure you all are well aware of that. Some of the information I've given you is public, but a lot of people are not aware because they're not focused on that right now. Now let me shift. So we just had, or we're going through Tropical Storm Alberto. And, you know, I will tell you that a lot of the weather groups, you know, monitored it, and we're pretty much on top. We're never 100% accurate on what these storms do, but the following of this one, you know, basically came into the coast, had a big impact on the coastal bend area, and it still is going to have an impact going south and inland. But the first thing it does, and the first focus of this, was not on wind this time, but was on water flooding, the impact on our rivers, the drainage issues, low-lying areas. In particular, over by the aquarium and the Lexington and the North Beach area, I saw a lot of the flooding issues right over there. Our rivers have been mentioned, and you know, dealing in the river areas, Right now, we have to watch, but it could get a little worse in the coming days. So what this storm did is it may have not impacted us as much on learning, but I think what it did, it focused a lot of people to look at water impacts and how it can affect a bay, an ocean, a river, a creek, how the low-lying levels can be impacted. It focused more on like the rising tides, the coastal flooding that we've had. And a lot of the pictures show that. A lot of downtown Corpus Christi had a lot of the flooding, especially over on the bay side. And so there was a lot more attention on the water side this time. And if there's a good about it, it makes everybody aware and it educates a little bit on providing attention to flooding issues. Now, when you live in the coastal bend, a lot of folks don't realize this throughout the state. Businesses and homes, they deal with insurance. And the problem is folks don't realize that many of you, when you buy a house or you buy a business, you are paying for 3 insurance policies. You're paying for flood, you're paying for wind, and you're paying for property. Whereas some folks are only paying 1 policy, and that's it. So it increases the costs on coastal communities. The coastal communities are looked at as the 14 tier 1, and then the counties that attach to us in tier 2. We get hit with a lot of insurance costs due to the flooding and due to the wind. And throughout the years, those costs only have gone upwards. Now, flood insurance is at a height in a premium, almost getting close to wind. But the economic impact to our area, take your chambers of commerces, take your business and industry. Sure is hard to attract a lot of folks when you scare them away with uneconomic insurance from a water event, flooding event, wind event, fire event. And recently we had some fires that were close by. So overall, that issue is also going to be looked at. Now, as most of you know, flood insurance is primarily federal. State doesn't really have a lot of control over the flood insurance program. We do over other types of insurance, but on flood insurance, that's primarily federal. So changes to that, you need to make recommendations to your 2 U.S. senators and to your U.S. Congress folks. The other thing I'll tell you about the issue of flood versus wind when we deal with the insurance issue is there's always sometimes an argument, was it wind driven or water driven? And so that always causes kind of a claim issue for those involved in the issues dealing with insurance. And I bring that up because that's becoming a bigger issue. One side event I want you to realize is across the U.S., not in Texas, there is a move to sell you insurance, but to cut coverages. Some of the policies don't include water. Some do not include fire. Some do not include hail. Some do not include wind. Then you wonder, well, what does it include and why am I paying it? But I want you to know that is a trend across the country, and you do need to watch that. There has been a trend recently of just denying renewals. A lot of folks have contacted me and say, I got a notice that I'm going to have to go find somebody else. They're just declining to cover me anymore. So And there was an argument the other day on insurance issues, be it water, be it wind, be it fire, hail, that your new technology today, such as drone cameras, taking a lot of pictures and making underwriting and coverage decisions based on what they see on camera. So just be prepared for these sort of things. And a follow note, there are Texas Department of Insurance, even though it does not oversee flood insurance, what it does do is it oversees regulated companies. I want you to know what I said, regulated companies. There are also unregulated companies like surplus line companies. Sometimes you can get insurance coverage at a pretty good price, but they may not be regulated by the state of Texas. And if you get into a dispute, that'll be up to you on how you handle it because they're not regulated in Texas. So it's very important that when you get into those issues, you let your agent know or your area know just to make sure you're not getting a good deal, but never being able to collect. Flooding in particular, river authorities, river impacts. There is policy movement and there is some development of ideas on coming up with new emergency planning efforts. You know, in Texas, we run back and forth on water issues. We're either in a drought or we've been overflooded by a storm or hurricane. So we kind of got to balance that all the time. And a lot of times, like our river authorities, we don't include, yet some of the authorities have some of the best expertise or on the ground involvement than many folks do that are in the planning. So there is going to be emergency planning rules and laws being developed. I'll have some of jurisdiction on that. So all of you out there that have ideas on improving current laws and statutes, or if you want to make modifications, let me know so that I can get that into some of the reports and pass that information along. But I will have some input. A side note, the Texas legislature in January is going to be different. And the difference is you always hear the politics. Put all the politics aside. This coming January, we're going to have a lot of new members. What I mean by that is not by age, but by experience. And this always happens. It always happens after certain years. People don't run again. People move to other things. Some run for higher offices. So this will be one of those starting years in 2025 that you won't have a lot of experienced veteran legislators. In a way, that's good. It's good because it allows more people to educate themselves. And in a way, it's not, because you lose a lot of that, historical knowledge. So we'll balance it. But the reason I bring that up, a lot of people don't understand what a river authority is. Some people don't even understand what a water authority is. Some people don't understand the local government impact on water. Some folks don't know what flooding is. They just hear the word. They don't know the planning. They don't know the emergency side. They don't know the drafting side. So from all of you there, understand we're going to have a legislature that's going to have to be educated quite a bit on your issue. And it's not a negative, it's just timing. That's what is going to happen. And so it won't be as easy just because we're going to have to help people understand the issues. The other thing is always remember, even though the legislature is 140 days, the first 60 days we technically cannot act unless the governor declares an emergency item. So if you subtract 60, from 140, you're down to 80. And then if you add those deadlines in from the House and the Senate, you're basically down to about 65 to 70 days. And that, remember, is the time to pass or not pass legislation. So it's not really 140 days. It's that short a period of time. Now, again, flood issues, planning issues, emergency management issues. Sometimes there is a misunderstanding from not only what you all do, but with what the agencies do. In the fire hearing that I had, even though it wasn't water related or flood related or river creek related, we found out that some of the agencies kind of didn't understand whose jurisdiction was over what. And it took the catastrophe to find out who really does. Well, with this recent flooding that we've had yesterday, today, and into the next couple of days, I need you all to watch that, because we need to figure out, if you need assistance, who really needs to be involved, because you may think it's clear as day and it may not be. So one thing you can help me with is, as we go through this water event, let me know if certain agencies helpful, not helpful, saying they're not involved, whatever. So let me know that. The other issue that I mentioned early on was this emergency management. Because there's been so many issues across the state, catastrophes, weather events, there is going to be, in my opinion, a significant number of laws introduced to start setting criteria for emergency management. Emergency management affects everybody that's listening to this recording or this presentation. You all will be impacted. But we want to make sure in Texas that we have common sense emergency management. So as we start going forward after these events, and there will be more, be sure to keep me and my office or the other committees that you deal with plugged in, so we can help on this particular emergency planning, because you are going to see a lot of ideas and concepts introduced. And give you something, last week I held a hearing under state affairs, and I brought in, we were basically talking about ERCOT, utilities, the electric industry, and basically, especially from San Patricio, Nueces, with the impacts overflowing into Clayburgh, Jim Wells, Aransas, even to Refugio, probably all the way to Calhoun. You're seeing the issue of power industries developing. I can tell you, each week I get a contact by a company wants to come in to the area on these areas of power. And everybody's looking at three concepts. Look at the coastal bend. What are the three demands? They need labor, power, and water. Those are the three big issues that I see and that I hear. So make sure you follow that, because if you don't see it, it's happening right now. But because of the impact, I decided to bring at that hearing the state climatologist. I'm going to tell you, I didn't even know we had a state climatologist. So I brought the state climatologist into the hearing and asked the state climatologist, give us, what do you see as the weather forecast trends from now to the beginning of year. Because all of you knowing, whatever business from the government side to the private side, you have to look at weather events, especially when you live in the coastal bend. I mean, if it's that winter event Uri, which everybody froze, or do you get into a heat hurricane? I wanted to know. What the climatologist said was very interesting. And this needs to get out to everybody, which is what I told them. They came in and told me, this was last week, that this summer for the Texas coast is supposed to be the most impacting hurricane season in the last 10 years. Well, that even includes Harvey. And now you just saw the current tropical storm coming in fairly early with its weather event. The climatologists said they don't see the pattern of a Uri forming in the beginning of the year, but they also said the wind, the water, hurricane development, they're talking about major ones coming into the Texas coast. And for all of you, they need to be talking to all of you so you can start doing your planning. And so I let you know that because I'm telling everybody from an emergency management, flood, water, utility, fire, electricity, renewable, a wind. We all need to be prepared. And hopefully what we can do on the current tropical storm is kind of learn from it and to be prepared. But I want you to know, if the climatologist projections are correct, this is just the start of what we may be seeing over the next few months. We started the season June 1st for hurricanes, and it ends at the end of November. But Texas seems to be a magnet this time, and the water's extremely warm in the ocean. And I asked about Saharan dust. I asked, will the Saharan dust have an effect of maybe stopping it or helping from a rain event, water event, flood event, wind event? And they said, not really. It's not that large of a makeup this season that will cut down on the hurricane movement. So the more we don't have the high pressure in our favor, the more we're going to have to keep our eyes open. And even right now, we're seeing buildups of other storms in the region that we follow. So I wanted to give you that information because it needs to be more public on what we're doing. Finally, all of you out there, don't be bashful to reach out. Best laws really come from you. I mean, a lot of the topics you're going to be discussing in your conference, you've been discussing, we need to hear, we need to get that information. So, you know, I mean, in my office, the chief of staff is Angie Flores. Many of you know her. She works our region, and then she goes to the capital. My District 32, which is Aransas and parts of Nueces, is run by Chrissy Ramirez as the district director, and many of you know her. Then Isabella Huerta works in the District 32, but also helps us in Austin. But all three of them will be in and out of the area. And then the State Affairs Committee, which I'll be overseeing some of the emergency, some of this sort of information. I'll be having a new clerk, and the new clerk is Margot Fox. She came from the Public Utility Commission, and she'll be the clerk of the committee. So feel free to reach out, but I don't want you to feel like you don't have a way to get in your input. But overall, I really do appreciate y'all always including me. It's always great to have a program like this, everybody involved, especially on the coastline. And It's been very good. This week, they had another coastal program that was done in our area. You all are doing it. And I think it's good that the coastal region is getting some impact, getting some focus, getting some education. Because sometimes they don't think about us until it's hurricane season. Yet flooding events, water events, wind events, unfortunately for us, can happen almost any time of the year. But overall, good thing is people are focused on our area and they're noticing how important our area is to the state. And I want to let you all know you all should keep up the good work. Again, thanks for including me. And all of you, any help, please contact me. And I really appreciate the group that has put this on. So thank you and have a great conference.